production function and utility function, there is a certain degree of objectivity to both of them. As I said, utility function, there are certain things you need, you have to have, without them you can't survive. But the combination is different, and there is always, today, not always, but there is usually something we have more than we need. At least if we have sufficient resources. That's the idea of capitalism, to have sufficient resources. In looking at the production function, it's the same. On the one hand, there are objective technical factors. If you have a car, you need one driver at least, up to now. They are changing this, but there are certain conditions defined by the technical stuff, by the machines, by the tool we have. By the tool as well. If you have a hammer, usually a small one, there is no use in having two people using it at the same time. It's actually not possible. They may have a nice fight about it, but they won't be able to work. So it is the combination, quantity of output is the combination that of the input that defines the output. If we have good material, good raw material, it changes the output. If we have highly productive machines, it changes the output. If we have cheap labor, we do not need necessarily highly productive machines, but we can replace at least some of the work and have workers doing it. If you want to use this, a little bit simplified as everything, you can say the market function is the intermediary instance that regulates, actually, that tries to balance, to join these two other functions. The basic idea is equilibrium here, equilibrium of demand and supply. If it is about means of production, if it is about your sports gear or your music, whatever it is regulated as long as it, or as soon as it is commodity via the market. And supply should, equilibrium should match the demand and vice versa. Usually we'll find in textbooks the formulation, there is an equilibrium. I think it is not really correct because it's striving towards an equilibrium, because the idea of the market is actually it's always changing. By a price mechanism, by a changing of changes of technology and the way of production, by different influences. So it's looking for an equilibrium, not producing more than I can sell, but produce as much as I can sell. So this strive towards equilibrium. And then we can say, looking at the three functions together, the utility function is very much about the individualist, the individual preferences. It's my personal decision in limits. Whereas the productive function, production function is about technical issues and the price. So the price makes it immediately to the price and the profit I have with the different combinations makes it to a social issue. And the market function as such is a social issue. And although we usually say it is the mechanism of the price that is decisive, meaning a strictly economic issue, we have usually something of power, of hegemony, of different interests, social interests in it. There is this amazing thing Now I talk about something that I'm not entirely sure about it, but the supposedly best computer, mass-produced computer is the Apple. Everybody says, Apple, this is really a great computer. I don't think so, to be honest. I have one. I'm suffering from one. But this is the common image. And at the same time, if you look at the market, who is the leading company, the most sold system? Microsoft. The power of Microsoft today goes so far that they begin, without buying Apple, have a huge, a major influence on Apple. Most of the Apple users, I guess, use Microsoft software. Simply because it is easy to use, it's compatible with the system, you don't have any trouble, or you don't have more trouble than you have anywhere with any computer. So this is important to keep in mind. The price is as well a means of using it on the market to obtain and maintain power. How do we do it? There are different mechanisms of influencing the price. The one is actually I withhold products to make them rare, price increases, and then people buy it for a higher price, and I have it already produced. I can just put it out there. This enormous run if there is a new model of something coming out. Everybody wants now to have it. Instead of producing it slowly, and then providing bit by bit, there is the new model. This is the run on the market. Another important point, first this one. Here you find, in a way, the summary of everything. Found it sometimes in the China Daily. Commodification, where you have had a leisure activity where some part of commodities had been involved. You buy your roller skates. It is now commercialized and commodified to a further degree that actually now it is not just you as individual who does it as individual entertainment with some peers, but it is a new market niche that is developed, and that makes us, all of us, thinking we really have to do this. Otherwise we are out, we are not socially recognized, life is no fun anymore if you don't join. And of course you have this push of other developments around it. But why I show it here, it is this market, the possibility to sell something now on the market, to make a mass product, not only out of the roller skates, but of the entire environment that goes hand in hand with it. Externalization is another important point, and there are different aspects to it. And first and foremost, the central issue is looking at the market. Where do we have the borders of the market? Do we have a closed market, which rarely exists today, or do we have an open market? This is the typical pattern where we have today open markets, trade, external trade, importing, export is something that happens every day. Where is the internal, external? Where are the borders? Usually it's very easy to define. We have the nation state with its national economy. This is the framework. We pay with our own money. And whatever we pay in other money is not part of our economy. As I said, we don't have really closed economies today anymore. But actually, if you look at one development that is already pushed quite it's not, we are not there, but we are getting there, apparently, is the Brexit. The single market of the European Union, where somebody steps out, the UK, and says, we are not part of this market anymore. We are a little bit part. We don't step out and close completely, but we step out. We are not, well, they had never been really part of it with their own currency, but this is another step now, moving out, closing the borders. Not completely, but to some extent. There's since yesterday a new development, Californexit, or Calexit, or something like this. California wants to leave the United States of America after Trump's success. Will be an interesting discussion. Not least if you look at who wants to exit. These are the rich people who have an option to leave. Well, I think I would leave as well, but I'm not going there. So there are these not complete closures, but there is this process, and we talked about enclosure. This is part of it. You take something out of the open market in terms of it is available for everybody, and there you see the different dimensions of what actually it means to talk about drawing borders. I don't want others to participate in the gain, but I want others to bear the pain. Others should pay. I don't want you to see you on my field. This is why I put a fence around what had been ours before. And of course you have to pay, because you have to see now, find another way of feeding your cattle. You can say to some extent, division of labor plays a role there, because if I have the best sheep, due to this enclosed ground, I can say, you do the woodwork, just plant trees on another ground. Or you get the wool from my sheep, because now they are really strong, good sheep, and you have more wool to work on. But at the same time, first and foremost, it means you are not allowed in, and you cannot profit from what is there. We have it at least in these 4 dimensions of externalizing things, externalizing cost. It is in terms of substance. Environmental issues play a role, but as well other issues like the division of labor that comes here into play. A typical example is, for instance, the finance sector. You study finance. Or accounting, the other group. These are typical things today in many enterprises. They had been internally operated. Every company had its own, every firm its own finance department or accounting department or IT, information technology department. They don't have it anymore. It's a bank. It's a financial institution. So many financial institutions today. It's an accounting firm. They do these jobs. And of course, they only do it because it is cheaper for me. Otherwise, I wouldn't pay you. Then it's getting kind of difficult to find out when is it useful, why is it useful to externalize it, and when is it useful to keep it inside. Then you have something in time. If I don't have to pay today, if I wait long enough, I don't have to pay at all. The damage I cause for my own profit is something you will have to pay. You will have to pay. Or your children. This is the principle of delaying. And possibly, nobody has to pay, because at that stage, when the damage is getting serious, we find a means that we can have a proper repair. Maybe. In many cases, we don't. But this is something to balance, to negotiate. How much can we externalize in terms of time? How much do we not pay today, being aware there is cost involved and we pay it tomorrow? In terms of space, there you have the typical competition between countries. You have rich countries, you have poor countries. The poor countries have to pay cheap labor, low development in many areas, to make it possible for other countries to develop. Of course, it's a hugely difficult thing, because at some stage these countries may catch up. At some stage they may even catch up because of this. Because there is something, small things coming in. The typical example, or one of the typical examples, is child labor. Where do you stop it? On the one hand, of course, child labor is a disgrace, but then you find actually people who say, yes, it is, but at the same time, this allows these children and their parents and the society to survive. It is questionable, it's hugely questionable, but this is the argument that you can say, I cannot simply say it's completely nonsense. At least they get something for today to eat, to survive. This is the limited view. What is involved is another question. Why this is possible, it's a matter of distribution and redistribution. This is the point. I externalize my cost, you get a little bit, but I get even more. I externalize my cost to get more. Then you have the other thing in terms of social issues, in terms of social groups and classes, where I leave the work to others. People who are not looking into the books and not studying, they cause my trouble that I have to, well, they cause their own trouble, that's fine, resitting the exams. But I have to check it then the second time, I have to make a second exam, this is my time, this is externalization of cost. Very simple thing. Even if it's not of cost in terms of money, but in terms of time, which is, under these conditions, money. It is about externalization. Socially, of course, the main thing is in terms of class. Some groups with an extremely low income, even in the one country, linked or being in the one country highly different, hugely different to others, to the high end. Social division of labor, social division of living standard, of incomes. You can translate many of these things. Division means externalization, means exclusion as well. The concept behind it, or one of the concepts behind it, is, and this makes it difficult actually to discuss it, is that there is what is called in economics comparative advantage. If I externalize, the basic idea is it's not just externalizing cost, but it is as well giving others the opportunity to gain in their own area, on their own level of development. I said this before, child labor, as disgraceful as it is, has at least the promise going with it, but you get a little bit. You get a little bit out of it, and you can do now on your level of development more than you could do before. I don't share this argument, but I came across people saying so in Ireland. And you have this comparative advantage as a very complex issue. There was a colleague from Poland. He was visiting me for a presentation, and then we stayed together and talked a little bit. And I said, listen, what is going on here in the country is a disgrace. Your fellow citizens moving from Poland to Ireland get very little money and live under extremely bad conditions. What you have to know in addition is that Ireland has a minimum wage, meaning the employers have to pay a certain amount of money, a minimum, to get somebody into work. Minimum wage. There are certain conditions when it comes to housing, when it comes to accommodation. And if you rent a house, if I let accommodation, I have to make sure that there are certain conditions fulfilled. Security, safety. It's not just enough to have for instance, have windows on the third floor or second floor, but there must be as well, and the main staircase, but there must be additional staircases somewhere in case there's a fire. Different things, I don't know the details. These Polish migrant workers lived under conditions that had not been complying with these minimum standards in terms of housing, in terms of income, in terms of working hours, and I said, I don't understand it, how a country like Poland actually can accept this. If it's not for the individual to intervene, it should be the country, your government, that should say, listen, we are part, I think at that stage it happened, we are part of the European Union, and this has to stop. Otherwise, we as Polish government will interfere and make the Irish government responsible. And he said, no, stop it. These people have a better living standard than they would have at home. So, in a way, and he was actually a social scientist and for social policy and all these things, in a way he says, yeah, I know, but still it's better than having nothing. And of course, it is better than having nothing. So the question is, in political terms, how do you find a way of dealing with it to have comparative advantage on the one hand, but at the same time having it in a way that does not undermine simply the conditions of improving the situation, but actually pushes the conditions, pushes the further development down. Now we come to something very difficult, because of course all this depends on the model of development we have. You have to go back to this to say what are the conditions in both countries for development. And there you see a huge inequality actually between countries developing. And you have huge theories and analysis about what it means, that in many cases, most of the cases, you have this development and you have actually two dissociations. You have the one for the individual worker or for the workforces, for the different classes, but you have it as well in terms of different countries. Comparative advantage, yes, but you decide actually, Andre Gunther Frank, an economist, he talked about the development of underdevelopment. He said certain countries, certain regions, globally or within countries, are intentionally kept down in their development to make it possible for others to advance. So, when it comes, this is especially on the international level one of the main arguments, when it comes to low wages in certain countries, it is exactly part of this model. I keep wages low in one country, in one area, in order to be able to maintain the system, to be better able to make gain, to make profit. Because if I would pay you the same, I would be in trouble. My gain, my profit is lessened. The entire theory of globalization of the world market, the world system, is based on this, the two views, the two perspectives on it. The one is what I just said. Inequality as strategic means of development. I keep you down to be able to stand higher or to stand on firm ground. It's a matter of production, but as well in a matter of consumption. I need markets to sell my goods. I need, on the one hand, the markets to produce low cost, and I need the markets to sell my goods. I create systematically this kind of dependency because my profit of the developed country depends on your non-profit or your limited profit. Comparative advantage, you still get a little bit more than you would get without it. Now, comparative advantage has another dimension, that there are certain things that I simply cannot do, especially when it comes to raw material and stuff that is depending on climate. But then again we have this question, do I need everything in every place? To which extent? It is somewhat funny, we take things for granted today, various things, but we should ask, to which extent can we actually do it and should we do it? Today you have, when it comes especially to vegetable, to meat, to fruit, to fresh products that are depending on climate, you can say basically you have it 12 months per year, you can avail of everything. You have greenhouses. If you don't have greenhouses, you grow it in another country, in another climate zone, and then you have it. The question is, do we need it? I don't say we don't need it. But the question we have to ask, do we need it? And if we say, yes, we need it, we have to ask to which extent. And what are the costs? Coming back to externalization. Which is a matter of quality as well. When I first had been eating my Christmas strawberries or some rubbish, I say intentionally rubbish, they didn't taste like strawberries at all. I don't know how they produced it. I remember as a student I bought always the cheapest apples, survival strategy, and I thought, this is some chemistry plant that produces them. They don't taste like apples. Now, chemistry is better today. Today's chemistry apples taste like apples. But the question is really, how far do we want to go with this kind of development? What is profitable, and what is profitable for whom? Today and tomorrow. Externalization. The other theory of development, main theory of development, is we all will catch up actually. We will all, it's Rostov who was talking about it, we all will get to the stage of development of highly developed mass consumption societies, mass production, mass consumption. So it's here especially André Gunder-Frank, Immanuel Wallerstein. If you want to read something, there are others as well. Giovanni Arrighi. These are two interesting texts. If you come across something, I would recommend it. André Gunder's articles are on the internet. There is this one, development of underdevelopment. Would recommend this up, may put it up on the internet myself. And here it is Mr. Rostov, exiled Russian advisor to the American president in the 1950s, I think. Basically saying there are 5 stages, and every country will go through these 5 stages, and all countries will be developed sooner or later. And developed means mass production of mass utilities. This is the path where we go, and this is the path where all countries will go. And then the question is, in both cases, does it work? Can you keep countries underdeveloped? Especially, can you do it without violence? I frequently said economics and economic questions are in front of you. The result of yesterday's elections is exactly, we have to maintain dependency. What did he say in his election speech? Making America strong again, a strong nation again. This is not because he has political illusions or ideas or whatsoever. It is about exactly this. We have to keep other countries, we, the strong nation, United States of Northern America, we have to keep other countries on a low level of development, and then we can save our benefit. This is as well why I think this idea of a Calexit is not really great, because they try to do the same. They are opposed, they are against Trump, they say, but they want to do the same. Because they are afraid actually his strategy won't work. So make sure that you are not going down the abyss with him, but make sure that you get your part secured. So a problem with this. Can you maintain it without violence? And what happens today if we have violence? And you, here in China, you find an excellent and a good example of it doesn't work. China had been catching up very fast. You can talk about details and again. You can ask, will it maintain this pace? Will it maintain this way? And the government discusses what to do now. But you have a development here that did not allow the countries of the center to keep China independent. Then you have development. Every country develops. Every country develops to the same stage. What does this mean? Does it work? To which extent does it work? To which extent can we drive consumption to a level that is not sustainable? It's on another slide. No, it's here. Unsustainable development. We have cars, we build more cars to have more profit, to build more cars and buy more cars, and. We have means of production, we have a productivity that is so high, we come later to details there, that is so high that actually we cannot produce any profit anymore. This is a paradox. A machine, a computer today is so fast that it basically overtakes itself. You cannot work with these capacities anymore. You build computers that are simply getting too hot to run. And we all go with this. We have telephones getting smaller and smaller, relative, because this is not just a telephone, it's a computer and blah, blah, blah. They are getting smaller and smaller, and what do you need? You need additional batteries. Because your battery is flat after one day, or after half a day. So you have to have your second battery. It's all these things. Today you have these flat computers, air computers and whatsoever. They don't have anything anymore. You need an internet to be able to work with them. Even these things don't work anymore. I saw recently a computer that you couldn't even use a USB flash drive. They're getting smaller and smaller, better and better, to an extent that we actually have to expand, to an extent that we cannot do it anymore. Exponential growth, you remember this, the one cone of rice. At some stage, there is an end to it. So we are in this kind of conflict zone. This is not meant to be in any way sexist or something. I simply dislike that you have women in advertisements, but it is about, especially if there's nothing about a woman here, it's not selling things to a woman, then it would make sense. But you have this woman there, Reno Horn, it's environmental issue. Reno Horn does the same thing as your own fingernails. So don't use any products that actually your body needs that are made of Reno Horn, and so we are sitting there and all chewing on our fingernails. because this does the job, apparently. I don't know, I'm not a biologist or chemistry, I don't have chemistry knowledge or something like this, you would need, but this is the idea. Protect the environment wherever you can. Don't say this is absolutely nonsense, because I don't know what is behind it. But at the same time, I don't want to eat my fingernails if I need whatever is in it. So this is the challenge in terms of externalization. How far do we go? What kind of comfort do we need? Do we define as needed? And where we say, well, this is enough, and this is actually over the top. This is more than we actually need in terms of use value, and this is something where we only go towards increasing exchange values. Do we need new computer models as soon as we leave the shop? There's the next one already on the shelf. So the basic question with all of this is externalization of cost, not least in terms of the long run, because at some stage we have to pay for it. And we can make profit out of it. But this is the entire kind of concept of industrialization, of this large industrialization. Externalization of cost, because cost with growth will increase, but I have to grow the economy, because otherwise I won't make profit, I won't gain anything. Externalization in different respects. And this is then the question of welfare, well-being, because we should not deny it that we need certain products. We need certain goods, commodities, we have to produce them, and this means wealth. This means welfare to some extent. We don't want to sit here on the ground and have a class, which may be fun sometimes, but this is not the basic idea. So I leave it here.